Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour, India's PM Narendra Modi addresses COP28 high-level segment, showcases country's development model, proposes India host climate summit in 2028. PM Modi launches Green Credit Initiative that focuses on creating carbon sinks through people's participation, calls for rich countries to transfer technology to help developing nations combat climate change. World leaders pledged more than $500 million for climate mitigation. On the sidelines of COP28, several bilaterals also held. And India's economy surges to 7.6% in the September quarter of this fiscal, maintains fastest growing status. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed COP28 high-level segment where he launched the Green Credit Initiative. Now, this new initiative focuses on creating carbon sinks through people's participation. PM Modi called for energy transition across the world, which must be just and inclusive.
With the aim to adopt planet-friendly living practices, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the Green Credit Initiative at the high-level segment for heads of states and governments during the UN Climate Conference in Dubai. The new initiative focuses on creating carbon sinks through people's participation.
आज मैं इस फोरम से एक और प्रो प्लैनेट, प्रोएक्टिव और पॉजिटिव इनिशिएटिव का आह्वान कर रहा हूं। यह है ग्रीन क्रेडिट इनिशिएटिव। यह कार्बन क्रेडिट की कॉमर्शियल मानसिकता से आगे बढ़कर जन भागीदारी से कार्बन सिंक बनाने का अभियान है।
Prime Minister attended a session on Green Credit Initiative. India, along with Sweden, Mozambique and EU, launched the web portal of Green Credits program.
आज हम एक ग्लोबल प्लेटफॉर्म भी लॉन्च कर रहे हैं। ये पोर्टल प्लांटेशन और पर्यावरण संरक्षण से संबंधित आइडियाज, एक्सपीरियंसेस एंड इनोवेशंस को एक जगह पर कलेक्ट करेगा।
Emphasizing collective efforts to combat climate change, Prime Minister asserted that India has made serious efforts in this direction.
India is one of those very few countries which has managed to meet its NDC target, that is the nationally determined contribution targets, and has been a role model in this COP. It has managed to strike a deal between economy and ecology.
Prime Minister also proposed to host the UN Climate Conference in 2028 in India.
भारत UN फ्रेमवर्क फॉर क्लाइमेट चेंज प्रोसेस के प्रति प्रतिबद्ध है। इसलिए आज मैं इस मंच से 2028 में COP33 समिट को भारत में होस्ट करने का प्रस्ताव भी रखता हूं।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi also took part in the Transforming Climate Finance session. PM urged the developed nations to increase the fund for climate.
हम उम्मीद करते हैं COP समिट से क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस से जुड़े अन्य विषयों पर भी ठोस परिणाम निकलेंगे। ग्रीन क्लाइमेट फंड और एडॉप्शन फंड में कमी नहीं होने दी जाएगी। विकसित देश 2050 से पहले अपना कार्बन फुटप्रिंट जरूर खत्म करेंगे।
Indian Prime Minister also called for maintaining a balance between mitigation and adaptation. During the session, Prime Minister Narendra Modi engaged in candid conversations with world leaders, which included UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe, Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa of Bahrain. Tapas Bhattacharya, Shishir Salar reports for DD India.
Addressing another session, Lead IT 2.0, Prime Minister Modi said Lead IT initiative was launched in 2019 to boost the innovation and technologies. He said all the countries of the Global South should get benefits from this initiative.
2019 में शुरू किया गया लीड आईटी हमारा साझा प्रयास है ताकि इंडस्ट्री ट्रांजिशन को बल मिले, लो कार्बन टेक्नोलॉजी और इनोवेशन को गति मिले और ये जल्द से जल्द और आसानी से ग्लोबल साउथ को भी मिले.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi held bilateral talks with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in Dubai on the margins of COP28. PM Modi lauded United Nations support in India's G20 presidency. PM Modi also held a bilateral meeting with the President of the Maldives, Mohamed Muizzu, on the sidelines of the COP28 in Dubai. A new fund to help compensate countries suffering from climate change was established at the 28th meeting of the COP as it opened in Dubai on Thursday. On day 2 of the summit, several world leaders pledged for global climate solutions. Take a look.
More than 70,000 delegates from around the globe gathered at the 28th session of COP28 in a bid to work out a worldwide solution to the pressing climate issues facing the planet and all mankind. UAE's Minister of Industry and Advanced Technology announced that this year's conference will focus on climate finance challenges.
And we see, as you see, that the world has reached a crossroads. I pledge that I will run an inclusive and transparent process, one that encourages free and open discussion between all parties.
A new fund to help compensate countries suffering from climate change was established at the 28th meeting for the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The announcement was seen as a major breakthrough at this year's conference. Calls to renew the fight against climate change were also made at the event.
We have been working very, very closely with other Transitional Committee members this entire year in order to design an effective fund that is based on cooperation and does not involve liability or compensation. And we're very much committed now to work with our Congress to provide $17.5 million specifically towards the Fund for Climate Impacts Response that will help vulnerable countries to respond to the impacts. But we also expect this fund to be up and running quickly.
UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan began the summit by announcing the establishment of $30 billion fund for global climate solutions, specifically designed to bridge the climate finance gap.
I am pleased to announce the establishment of $30 billion climate fund around the world, which was designed to bridge the climate finance gap and to obtain it at a good cost. The fund also aims at encouraging the gathering of the fund and investment of $250 billion by 2030.
Meanwhile, Britain's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak pledged $2 billion in funding at the UN Climate Summit, an attempt to bolster green credentials after watering down Britain's measures to reach net zero targets.
We're leading the world in new industries like offshore wind. We're protecting nature at home. So we've got a great story to tell. And I'll be announcing £1.6 billion of funding to help lots of other countries make that transition.
On the sidelines of COP28, several bilaterals were held. Israel's President Isaac Herzog met the President of the UAE, Mohammed bin Zayed, while Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani met with Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva.
Earlier, in an interview to a UAE-based newspaper, Al Etihad, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi highlighted some of the steps taken by India to tackle climate change. The Prime Minister said India and the UAE stand as partners in shaping a greener and more prosperous future. India and the UAE enduring relations provide support to the International Solar Alliance's Global Solar Facility. India and the UAE have emerged as leaders in global renewable energy efforts. Climate action must be based on equity, climate justice, shared obligations and shared capacities. We must ensure that development priorities of the Global South are not compromised. Enduring relationship is founded on multiple pillars. The dynamism of the ties is expressed by comprehensive strategic partnership. Cooperation between the two countries spans entire energy spectrum with a strong focus on sustainability. India's mission Lifestyle for Environment is an initiative to motivate the world. And during India's G20 presidency, India ensured that particular attention was paid to climate change. At COP26, India had presented Panchamrit, 5 ambitious commitments of India. Delegates at COP28 received a sweet surprise upon entering the hall: complimentary chocolates, but with a crucial message. The wrappers have a message for them. It encourages them to collaborate in achieving the 1.5 degrees Celsius target. The proceeds from the purchasing of these chocolates in Europe will contribute to planting more trees worldwide. Tapas Bhattacharya has the details.
In COP28, people are making a statement through chocolate. Yes, they are giving chocolate, but they are also making a statement through these things that are written here. I will get to you more information. Sir, it's written store at max 1.5. What is that?
So 1.5 degrees is the goal of the Paris Climate Accord, and we really want to keep the 1.5 degrees maximum of weather change.
And it's also written 1.2 degrees and 420 ppm. And what's the significance of that?
Yes, so we are already at 1.2 degrees, so there's not much left to 1.5. So we have to act like really fast and cut down emissions.
So I want to know, you guys are giving chocolates here for free. What's the message that you guys are giving? Why giving these chocolates to the delegates here?
Yes, there were at one time like 6 trillion trees. Now there are 3 trillion trees. So we have to restore forests around the world because they suck CO2 from the atmosphere. It's not the solution, but it will give us more time to reduce emissions and then fight climate change together.
And there is also a statement that is there. What is that statement, you guys? What is the whole thing here inside this wrapper?
Yes, so this is the statement we have to delegates. It basically says that we need to restore the forests around the world and that we have to act really fast to fight the climate crisis.
So you see, these are the manner in which chocolates is bringing a major change in COP28. The delegates are getting these chocolates for free, but this is how they are making a statement in the world: plant more trees and stop cutting trees. And that's the only way you can restore carbon emission in the environment. With camera person Jashinkar, this is Tapas Bhattacharya for DD India from Dubai.
Still to come on DD India News Hour. Indian economy records a 7.6% growth in the second quarter. The annual Navy Day scheduled to be held on 4th December. And Mumbai hosts the 3rd India Debt Capital Market Summit 2023.
We are taking up India's role and leadership in multilateral climate negotiations. How India has performed in climate talks over the years, what are the major pressing issues from India's point of view and from that of the Global South, and how are climate negotiations progressing and do they hold out hope for humanity?
I think there's a growing realization that there is scope for India to have competitive advantage by being an early mover in technologies like battery, technologies like hydrogen. We see the solar potential in India. And so we are doing what a responsible power should do, which is something that promotes the global good while also promoting the national good.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. The Indian economy sprung a surprise in July-September 2023-24, recording a 7.6% growth in the second quarter, considerably higher than the consensus estimate. The surge was largely led by the manufacturing sector. More in the next report.
India retained the tag of world's fastest growing major economy, with its GDP expanding by a faster than expected rate of 7.6% in the July-September quarter on booster shots from government spending and manufacturing. India's gross domestic product for the second quarter of the ongoing financial year accelerated to 7.6% year-on-year. In the same period last year, the GDP growth stood at 6.2%. In a post of X, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that the gross domestic product numbers for the second quarter of the year display the resilience and strength of the Indian economy in the middle of testing times globally.
The current state of the Indian economy is one of robust health and continued vigor. What the second quarter growth numbers showed us was the underlying momentum is very significant. And if anything, the Indian economy has not only recovered from the shock of the COVID pandemic and last year's commodity prices, but is marching ahead to deliver steady growth in the coming years as well.
The data released by National Statistical Office on Thursday showed that surge was largely led by manufacturing sector, which jumped 13.9% year-on-year in the second quarter, helped by a favorable base and improved volume growth.
As far as development is concerned, the government's initiative has been to spend massive amounts on public investment in infrastructure, because India has always been an infrastructure deficient, supply constrained economy, and this government has assiduously moved to address both these challenges. Over the last several years, Indian government's capital expenditure has gone up by 3 times. It has also improved the quality of public expenditure in the country.
Core sector growth was reported at a whopping 12.1% in October 2023, given huge capital expenditure, both private, public sector companies and government spending on core projects. The construction sector surprised on the upside, and so did the mining and electricity, gas, water supply and other utility services by recording a double-digit output growth in the July-September quarter. The production of all 8 core industries recorded positive growth in the October 2023 over the corresponding month of last year. These numbers put India as the fastest growing major economy, as China posted a 4.9% growth in July-September 2023. Aman Kumar Himanshu reports for DD India.
India's gross GST revenue collection in the month of November 2023 stood at $20.34 billion. The revenues for the month of November 2023 are 15% higher than the GST revenues in the same month last year. It's for the 6th time that the gross GST collection has crossed $19.4 billion mark in 2023-24. The gross GST collection for the financial year 2023-24 ending November 2023 is 11.9% higher than the gross GST collection for the year 2022 and 2023. India will host the 8th edition of the Global Technology Summit in New Delhi on the 4th of December. It will continue till the 6th of December. The theme of this year's summit is Geopolitics of Technology. The Global Technology Summit is India's flagship event on geotechnology. The GTS 2023 will feature around 100 speakers and thousands of participants, including policymakers, industry experts, academics, technocrats and innovators from India and across the world. Besides India, ministers and senior government officials from several countries, including the US, the UK, Germany, Singapore, Sierra Leone, Sri Lanka, Kenya, Lithuania, Brazil and the European Union will also participate in the summit. The summit will also see the participation from students and young professionals from India and the South Asian region. The GTS 2023 will discuss the impact of emerging technologies on geopolitics and policy issues, the impact of critical technologies on cross-cutting policy issues related to digital public infrastructure, export controls, data protection and national security will also be discussed in the summit. Ahead of the annual Navy Day scheduled to be held on the 4th of December, the Indian Navy Chief addressed a press conference in New Delhi. He said that the Navy is keeping an eye on activities happening in the Indian Ocean region.
China may have a legitimate reason to be present in the Indian Ocean region for economic activities. But what we, as the resident naval power in the Indian Ocean, we keep an eye on what all is happening there. We try to keep the extra-regional forces which are present in the region under surveillance, and we would like to know what are their activities, what are they engaged in, and what are the intentions. We are aware of all the happenings that are taking place.
The third India Debt Capital Market Summit 2023 is being held in Mumbai. India's Union Minister for Commerce and Industry, Piyush Goyal, virtually inaugurated the summit. He said that a resilient debt capital market will be a catalyst for innovation, entrepreneurship and infrastructure development in India.
A resilient debt capital market will be the catalyst for innovation, entrepreneurship and infrastructure development. We can see that 4 elements will help us drive this in the years to come. Massive urbanization, expected to be 50% by 2050, and our Tier 2 cities also growing to become metropolitan cities. Rural areas, incomes rising, so that spending is across the country. Futuristic sectors like AI, semiconductors, electric vehicles, powering our future. Third, green and sustainable energy being the way forward, and the capital markets and debt markets playing their role in our energy transition to a low-carbon economy. And fourth, invest without the fear of missing out.
All right, take a look at some other stories making news in India. After suspected deaths of 3 people in Surat in the Indian state of Gujarat, allegedly after consuming an Ayurvedic syrup, Special Operation Group of Surat Police launched an investigation by raiding 7 places in the city. Police seized 2,135 bottles of illicit Ayurvedic syrup to curb the menace. Pura Lake, located in Tiruvallur in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu, is currently at a level of 48.97 feet, slightly below its full tank capacity of 50.20 feet following continuous rainfall. According to a Metro Water's lake level report, reservoir is holding more than 93% of its 3,300 million cubic feet capacity, leading to controlled water release since Thursday morning. Owing to the likelihood of a cyclone over the Bay of Bengal, there will be an impact of the storm over the Indian state of Andhra Pradesh between 2nd and 6th December. This according to the India Meteorological Department. On 3rd December, heavy to very heavy rains at isolated places is likely to occur as well. India's Border Security Force is celebrating its 59th Raising Day today. On this occasion, the Border Security Force reiterated its commitment to the nation and its motto, lifelong duty.
Bharat, the land of great men and women. For each generation, there is a call to serve this country. BSF Academy, a symbol of pride, valor and sacrifice. A legacy of producing some of the best soldiers who have served the country. A place where young boys and girls are molded into tough heroes. Where they discover their purpose and are made to realize that they are stronger than they think. They learn to dig deep and push through adversity, together to defend a country. But battles aren't won solely on the battlefield. Battles are won within. Over enemies of fear, over enemies of doubt. In a place where promises are kept. A promise to oneself. A promise to friends and family. A promise to 1.4 billion people. And a promise to a nation. In the heart of every soldier, you will find a promise. Promise kept forever. For that purpose, today we are celebrating BSF Raising Day. Defending our nation and its people. This is Border Security Force, duty unto death.
After being trapped for 17 days in a tunnel of the Indian state of Uttarakhand, all 41 workers are now returning to their homes with renewed hope, energy and a fresh start. Their eyes were filled with tears after seeing their family members. More in the next report.
These 41 labourers, who were rescued in the Silkyara tunnel of Indian state of Uttarakhand, have now started reaching their homes after being trapped for 17 days. These 8 workers from Indian state of Uttar Pradesh met Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath in Lucknow on Friday. Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath interacted with workers and inquired about their well-being. After the meeting, workers lauded the efforts of the government.
नया जीवन मिल गया है और बहुत खुश हैं। योगी जी से भी मिलके बहुत सपना था हमारा कि इनसे मिल लेंगे जिंदगी में कभी भी मिलेंगे या नहीं, फिर मिले, बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है।
सर वो तो कभी भूल ही नहीं सकते, क्या वही प्रशासन सारा चीज किए हैं व्यवस्था निकालने के लिए।
While 5 workers from Indian state of Bihar reached Patna, they were welcomed at the airport. The workers expressed gratitude to the Uttarakhand and Union government for their safe return.
सबसे बड़ी बात है कि कंपनी, उत्तराखंड सरकार, सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने बहुत हेल्प किया और जो 41 मेंबर्स थे, किसी को एक खरोच तक नहीं आया था। आप लोगों को मालूम है, एम्स का भी रिपोर्ट कल सामने आया, किसी को कुछ नहीं हुआ है।
On the other hand, Vishal Kumar, a worker from Himachal Pradesh, was given a grand welcome on reaching his native place Mandi in Indian state of Himachal Pradesh. while all the workers from Odisha rescued from the Silkyara tunnel reached Bhubaneswar along with Odisha's Minister Sarat Prasad Nayak, where they were welcomed. 41 workers trapped inside the Silkyara tunnel since November 12 were rescued safely on November the 28th. Bureau Report, DT India.
Inaugurating the 5th Global Ayurveda Festival in Thiruvananthapuram in the southern Indian state of Kerala, India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar highlighted India's decade-long commitment to promoting Ayurveda and the role of technology in expanding Ayurveda globally.
We have never believed or subscribed to transgressions that are unacceptable to the global order. Ayurveda will be a connecting bond. These deliberations will qualitatively enable exploration of Ayurveda's transformative potential in addressing these challenges. And the challenges are visible in every home. There can be nothing more better and efficacious, wholesome than Ayurveda.
Still to come on DD India News Hour. Israel begins combing operation in Gaza after a temporary truce ends. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un urges his military to be ready to respond to any provocation by its enemies. And the Russia-Ukraine war continues. Zelensky visits a metro station in Kharkiv.
Operation Zindagi has now become a kind of a copybook example of how to manage a disaster operation in our country.
Within the next 1 week to 2 weeks, we'll have all the inputs coming in. Then there will be a meeting of this. There'll be an analysis and a full synthesization of all the things which have happened. And then we will draw out the lessons, publicize them, and look for guidelines for the future.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. A quick recap of the headlines. India's PM Narendra Modi addresses COP28 high-level segment, showcases country's development model, proposes India host climate summit in 2028. PM Modi launches Green Credit Initiative that focuses on creating carbon sinks through people's participation, calls for rich countries to transfer technology to help developing nations combat climate change. And world leaders pledge more than $500 million for climate mitigation on the sidelines of COP28. Several bilaterals are also held. And India's economy surges to 7.6% in the September quarter of this fiscal, maintains fastest growing status. All right, going back to the top story, the ongoing COP28 in Dubai. Joining me are two very special guests, Dr. Mohan Kumar and Mr. Ashish Chaturvedi. Dr. Kumar is a former Indian ambassador to France and Bahrain. He joins us from the New Delhi suburb of Greater Noida. Mr. Chaturvedi is the head of action for climate and environment at UNDP India. He joins us from New Delhi. Gentlemen, welcome to DD India News Hour. Ambassador Kumar, if I can start with you, are you satisfied with how COP28 is shaping up so far from India's perspective?
I think it's a little too early to say, Ramesh. Thank you for having me. But so far, I would say so good. At least established the operational framework for the loss and damage fund. And I think there is a realization that countries are falling behind. That is what the first global stocktake is going to say.
Right.
Ever since Paris happened, Ramesh, your viewers should know that until the Paris COP happened, leaders came only towards the end of the COP conference. It Paris for the first time that the French reversed the order. And they said, let the leaders come in the beginning of the COP summit, encourage the chief negotiators to do their best, and then get out of the way so that negotiators can then burn the midnight oil and try to arrive at a consensus. So I would say so far, so good. I wanted to, if you give me 1 minute, I wanted to emphasize the strong message. The strong message by PM is implicit, actually pointing a finger at the developed countries and telling them that the global carbon budget is no longer enough for the developing countries, and the developing countries must get a fair share of the global carbon budget. And the second point that the PM made is equally valid. All the issues on the table should get equal treatment, and we must move in a balanced manner. He had in mind adaptation, mitigation. He had in mind finance, technology, and loss and damage. Because what you see from the developed countries so far is just an emphasis on mitigation, mitigation, and mitigation. In fact, the financial transfer meant for adaptation has actually fallen for the first time in the last 2 years. So I thought the PM's message was pertinent, and I hope it is received in the right quarters in the spirit in which it was made, because the developed countries and China have a lot of responsibility to fulfill in this COP summit if the COP outcome is to be seen as being credible.
Indeed. Mr. Chaturvedi, a consensus on day one of the summit on loss and damage fund. A good start, you think?
Absolutely. I think it's a great beginning. And what I believe is kind of a landmark moment as far as thinking about non-mitigation funding is concerned. There have been commitments made already. So Germany is putting in $100 million. The UAE is putting in $100 million as well. Of course, the gap is still going to be massive. The order of magnitude of funding which is required to cover loss and damage is in, well, sort of orders of billions, if not trillions. So the commitments that have been made thus far is of course a good beginning, but I think there are lots of loose ends which need to be tied up as well. But I think it's well begun. And the fact that, well, sort of other than adaptation, loss and damage has, of course, not gotten any resources thus far. So as compared to mitigation, which gets the lion's share of the resources in climate finance, adaptation hasn't received as much resources. And of course, now loss and damage is finally getting some kind of recognition. But I think we also need to be aware that this is part of sort of climate diplomacy. So this is just the first day of the COP. And we have to be really watchful over the next few days as the different events unfold, where we'll be talking about the global stocktake. We'll, of course, be looking at the new goal on climate finance, and, of course, issues around transparency, Article 6, which is about carbon markets. I think those issues will be up for discussion as well. And needless to say, the global goal on adaptation as well, which still has to be closed.
Ambassador Kumar, you referred to Prime Minister Modi's interventions at COP28. One big outcome or takeaway from one of his interventions on Friday at COP28 in Dubai was India's proposal to host COP33 in 2028. You think it's a good idea to showcase India's green credentials, number one, and number two, to leverage or build on India's consensus building image that's been built in view of the G20 summit that was hosted in New Delhi recently?
Absolutely, Ramesh. There's no question, especially after the resounding success of the G20 summit, which was held in Delhi recently, and India managed to bring together different parties. The way I see it, it's not just showcasing India's green credentials, although that is an important point. I think the second more important point for me is India's agency and ability to act as a bridge between the North and the South, and to be the voice of the global south. I think these two considerations are predominant and extremely important in India offering itself as a host for COP33. I will have you know that it is not as if countries are desperately queuing up to host the COP summit, because the COP summit by definition is a difficult summit. Getting consensus among 200 countries is no joke. So if India has done it, it shows two things: that India, number one, is confident now of acting as a bridge after the G20 summit. And secondly, India feels that this is conference diplomacy in which India can put forward the points of view of the global south and act as a bridge and achieve consensus, which is also part of the transition that India is making from being a rule taker to a rule shaper. And I see this as a big moment, actually, in India's diplomacy.
Absolutely. What Ambassador Kumar says gives me a perfect segue to my next question to you, Mr. Chaturvedi. We've seen India and France come together for the Solar Alliance a few years ago, and now we're seeing the Lead IT, or Industry Transformation 2.0, along with Sweden. Is a good example of North-South cooperation, which Ambassador Kumar was referring to?
Yeah, well, Lead IT was actually launched at the climate summit, which was organized by the UN Secretary General around the Paris summit. And of course,
I'm told these are the visuals coming to you from Dubai of the departure of India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi after concluding his engagements at COP28 in Dubai. Remember, these are the visuals from the airport of Prime Minister Modi's departure for New Delhi from Dubai. Remember, he was on a two-day visit to the UAE for addressing the COP28 summit in Dubai. All right, if you're just tuning in, we are getting you the latest visuals of India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi's departure from Dubai for New Delhi after concluding his two-day visit to the UAE, where he addressed the opening session of the COP28 and held a number of other meetings, side events as well, on the margins of the Environment Summit. All right, returning to my guest, Mr. Chaturvedi, apologies for that interruption there, but do finish making your point.
Right now is to decarbonize industry, and I think the leadership group for industry transition essentially tries to do that. And of course, you need technology providers to work very closely where big growth and big industrial expansion is going to happen, and India is definitely going to be one of those countries where you will have massive production of steel, massive production of steel, because it's a growing economy. In your earlier segment, you talked about 7% growth rates, which are going to continue for the next several years. So you would need these materials. And if you really want to align yourself with the goals of the Paris Agreement and decarbonize, you would need partnerships between sort of developed countries and the global north and the global south. So I think it's a great example. And the fact that it's the 2.0 is being launched and is being announced, I think it'll be a great segue to a much more advanced relationship, which can also serve as a bridge for the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, where developed and developing countries can actually partner in cooperative approaches. I will be actually at the COP beginning tomorrow, and there will be lots of events, including at the India Pavilion, which will be looking at these kinds of partnerships. So I'm delighted that this has already been launched.
Indeed. Ambassador Kumar, you referred to how India is becoming more confident on the world stage, having organized the G20. It's coming into its own, as it were. In that context, I want to ask you, does it help that India's track record on climate change or climate crisis, speaks for itself? India has been walking the talk. You take the Solar Alliance or the CDRI or Biofuel Alliance or even Mission Life for that matter. India walks the talk, and when India speaks, countries do sit up and take notice of what it's saying.
I totally agree with you. What we have done successfully is two things. One, we have walked the talk in terms of making sure that our nationally determined contributions are followed by us in letter and spirit. So whatever we have promised in terms of nationally determined contributions been fulfilled in whole measure, not even substantial measure, but in whole measure.
Right.
The second thing we have, I think, done, and I want your viewers to know this, we are the only major country which is being asked to follow a low carbon pathway. All the developed countries have already burned enough coal, and that is why we have so many emissions in terms of historical legacy emissions. China now burns more coal than the entire world put together. So what China has done, and I say this not by way of criticism, but by way of objective observation, China has followed the developed countries precisely. The same high carbon pathway has been followed by China. The only major country which is now being told that, listen, don't make the same mistakes we have done because this is bad for the environment. Please follow a low carbon pathway is India. India is the only major country that is being asked to do this. I find remarkable in India achieving the nationally determined contribution established by itself is that we have done this with very little finance from outside. That is what was remarkable. We need a lot more finance. And as my colleague co-panelist said, it is in billions of dollars, not millions of dollars, but we haven't got those. So it is what is remarkable about India walking the talk is not just fulfilling the nationally determined contribution, but doing so with very little finance from outside. I think that's what is remarkable.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for. May I thank both my guests, Ambassador Mohan Kumar and Mr. Chaturvedi, for joining us and sharing your thoughts with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. Moving to news coming from West Asia now, Israel has resumed striking the Hamas targets in Gaza after a temporary truce between the two came to an end after 7 days. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said that Hamas violated the truce by not freeing more hostages and by firing rockets at Israeli civilian areas. It added that Israel will meet its goals of eliminating Hamas and securing the release of all hostages. Sirens warning of incoming rockets were sounded in Israeli areas near Gaza just minutes before the truce. The ceasefire, which began on 24th November, was extended twice. It allowed for the release of dozens of hostages held by Hamas in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Meanwhile, Qatar has said that negotiations were still ongoing with Israel and Hamas to restore the truce. Reports say that North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un visited the Air Force headquarters and urged the country's military to be ready to respond to any provocation by its enemies. Visiting North Korea's Air Force Command on Thursday for the branch's Airman Day, Kim rolled out operational strategic guidelines to enhance the military's preparedness and war capabilities. Since North Korea launched a spy satellite last month, the situation on the Korean peninsula has escalated, with South Korea suspending a key provision of the 2018 Inter-Korean Military Agreement and North Korea declaring that it no longer adheres to that agreement. The US and South Korea have issued fresh sanctions against foreign-based agents over North Korea's satellite launch. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky visited a central Kharkiv metro station used as a school due to frequent Russian airstrikes. He spoke to the children and asked them about the details of their studies. Now, Kharkiv has built dozens of classrooms in metro stations to allow some pupils to return to in-person education. Earlier that day, Zelensky had also visited troops near the Kupiansk sector of the front line in the country's northeast, thanking troops for their sacrifices. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Taiwan again faces Chinese aggression, warplanes and warships around the island. Contrasting the global trend, India continued to witness a decline in malaria cases. and HIV/AIDS infections decline across the world.
We are taking up India's role and leadership in multilateral climate negotiations. How India has performed in climate talks over the years, what are the major pressing issues from India's point of view and from that of the global south, and how are climate negotiations progressing, and do they hold out hope for humanity?
I think there's a growing realization that there is scope for India to have competitive advantage by being an early mover in technologies like battery, technologies like hydrogen. We see the solar potential in India. And so we are doing what a responsible power should do, which is something that promotes the global good while also promoting the national good.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Taiwan has reported Chinese warplanes and warships around the island on Thursday, including aircraft crossing the sensitive median line of the Taiwan Strait, as Beijing keeps up its military activities ahead of Taiwan's January election. Democratically governed Taiwan, which China claims as its territory, has complained of regular Chinese military patrols and drills near the island for the past 4 years. The strait's median line once served as an unofficial barrier between the two sides, but Chinese planes now regularly fly over it. Taiwan's ministry said Taiwan sent its forces to monitor. This month, Taiwan has reported at least 3 other similar large-scale sorties by China's Air Force. China says its activities near Taiwan are aimed at preventing collusion between Taiwan separatists and the U.S. and protecting China's territorial integrity. The deadline for submission of nomination papers for the parliamentary elections in Bangladesh has expired on Thursday. However, several political parties have requested the Election Commission for an extension. The Bangladesh Nationalist Party and its allies announced that they will enforce a 48-hour blockade across the country starting Sunday morning. It will be the 9th round of a blockade by the opposition parties since 31st October. Jatiyo Party Secretary said that there is no division within the party and it will contest in all 300 seats with its own symbol. The 12th parliamentary election will be held on 7th January 2024. Around 120 million voters under 42,103 polling will cast the votes. The Indian Embassy in Kathmandu and the Ministry of Finance, Nepal, held a projects portfolio performance review meeting on Friday. The Indian side was led by Naveen Srivastava, Ambassador of India, and the Nepalese side was led by Dr. Prakash Sharan Mahat, Finance Minister, Government of Nepal. The discussions were held on ongoing projects in various sectors under the India-Nepal Development Cooperation Framework, both under grant assistance and under various lines of credit. The meeting also deliberated on potential sectors of collaboration between India and Nepal in the future. India is the largest and most prominent development partner of Nepal. Contrasting the global trend, India continued to witness a decline in malaria cases and deaths last year. This according to a new WHO report. Meanwhile, the WHO report showed that cases of malaria rose by around 5 million year-on-year in 2022 globally. Malaria deaths declined steadily between 2000 and 2019 globally, but the cases rose during the pandemic mainly among young children. HIV/AIDS is a global health challenge affecting millions. With new infections declining, treatment options improving, ongoing research for a vaccine, and the support of organizations and individuals worldwide, hope shines through. Today on World AIDS Day, let's explore the progress made and the road that lies ahead.
human immunodeficiency virus, commonly known as HIV, is a major global health challenge. It causes acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, that is AIDS, and impairs the body's ability to fight infections. According to World Health Organization, in 2022, there were approximately 39 million people living with HIV worldwide, with 37.5 million being adults and 1.5 million being children. About 53% of those affected were women and girls. The number of new HIV infections has seen a decline of 38% since 2010 and 59% since the peak in 1995, with an estimated 1.3 million new cases in 2022. HIV primarily spreads through sexual contact, as well as through blood products and mother-to-child transmission. Early symptoms of HIV infection may include flu-like symptoms such as fever, chills, rash, night sweats, muscle aches, and so on. While AIDS symptoms include weight loss, fever, fatigue, and recurrent infection and other neurological disorders. While there is no cure for AIDS, adherence to antiretroviral regimens can slow down the disease progression and prevent complications. Vaccines for HIV are still being developed. In India, the estimated number of people living with HIV/AIDS in 2019 was around 2.34 million. The HIV prevalence in the country has been decreasing since 2000 and stabilizing in recent years. Efforts are being made to combat the epidemic through the National AIDS Control Program. Although challenges persist, progress has been made in reducing stigma and promoting safer behaviors. With continued support, education, and access to treatment and prevention methods, we can strive towards a future where HIV/AIDS is effectively managed and the number of people affected is minimized. Sujata Lochab, DD India.
The 554th birth anniversary of Guru Nanak Dev was observed at the historic Nanak Shahi Gurudwara in Dhaka on Friday. People from various walks of life offered obeisance at the Gurudwara on the occasion of the Gurpurab. Special prayers from Gurbani were recited and a community feast was organized. Gurudwara Nanak Shahi is a historic Gurudwara in Dhaka as it was built in 1830 to commemorate the visit of Guru Nanak in the year 1506. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.